It seems like we've been waiting forever for the cinematic event that was Avengers Endgame. But it seems like for every fan theory confirmed or question answered, a new one popped up to take its place. Don't you just hate it when that happens? If you left the theater with some lingering doubts plaguing your mind, you're not alone. Today, we're going to be talking about the questions we still need answers to after watching Avengers Endgame. Loki. Going into Avengers Endgame, it was safe to assume a few things, like that there'd be some sort of pop culture references, some snarky comments, and that the decimation would be undone. Call us optimists, but otherwise Spider-Man Far From Home and Black Panther 2 would be really sad. That being said, we have to admit being less than certain about the fate of those characters who perished outside of the decimation itself. Characters like Heimdall, Vision, Gamora, and of course, Loki. Scott Lang might not have gotten up close and personal with Thanos like many of us thought that he would, but he did get close to Tony Stark's heart. So close that he stopped it momentarily, which ended up with Loki getting a hold of the Tesseract and vanishing. So, we're assuming that means he's still alive somehow. But where was he and why didn't he show up for the final battle? Is he still a good guy, or does all of the character development he did during Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War not actually count? If he was good, then surely he would have shown up in the ultimate fight against Thanos. But if he's still deceased, then why show him grabbing the Space Stone and disappearing? New Asgard. Speaking of Thor Ragnarok, who could forget the happy ending when Asgard burned to the ground? Good times. After the professional assessment from our good friend Korg, we learned the Asgardians were going to have to find a new place to call home. Following the battle with Hela, their numbers were already diminished. And we know Thanos destroyed half of them after boarding the Statesman. So, did the decimation affect them? Did it take out half of all the remaining Asgardians, or did it leave them alone because Thanos and the Black Order destroyed half of them manually? Well, you won't get any answers to those questions in Avengers Endgame, and you'll be left wondering just how the transfer of power works in New Asgard, since Thor just passes the place over to Valkyrie with a firm handshake. Thor got a whole coronation when he was going to take the throne, but Valkyrie just gets 2 new roommates. Is that really how things work in Asgard? Is nobody going to think it's weird when Valkyrie suddenly announces that she's running the place and Thor is never going to come back? Well, maybe the Asgardians aren't any more inclined to argue with a fierce warrior astride a beautiful Pegasus than we would be in the same situation. Red Skull. It's no secret that the Russo brothers love the Red Skull. Sure, his face is so hideous that even Adolf Hitler himself couldn't stand to look at him, but apparently, it's a face only directors could love. As far as villains go, he's admittedly a very great one, especially since he's the antithesis of one of our all-time favorite Avengers. At the end of Captain America: The First Avenger, we saw him grab a hold of the Space Stone, which turned out pretty poorly for him. He ended up on Vormir, guarding the Soul Stone, which is a pretty ironic fate for someone who was obsessed with possessing one of the stones. So Red Skull got a new job, a creepy new uniform, and the ability to know the names of people's parents. Yeah, okay, maybe that last one isn't very useful. The Russo brothers claim that following the events of Infinity War, Red Skull is free to pursue his goals elsewhere. So, where is he? If he's not serving the Soul Stone, how is he going to get back to Earth? Can he just call an interstellar Uber? Captain America. Now, we all know time travel's complicated. Much like Scott Lang, we base our knowledge of time travel almost entirely on the Back to the Future franchise. But sadly, one of the many things we learned during Endgame is that Doc Brown's rules don't apply to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We know, we were shocked those movies don't take place in the MCU too. Bruce Banner tried to give us a rundown of how time travel works in the MCU, but frankly, even his explanation left a lot of unanswered questions. And most of them involve Steve Rogers. At the end of the movie, he goes back in time to put the Infinity Stones back in their respective places in history, and decides to remain in the past instead of returning to the future. So we get to see an old Steve Rogers, but his teeth are still shockingly perfect. Are his teeth magic? Did the super soldier serum protect his pearly whites at the expense of his skin, which wrinkled, and his hair, which grayed? What happened to his perfect American butt? Well, the real question we're wondering about has to do with Sharon Carter. You know, the niece of Steve's one true love, Peggy Carter, that he totally smooched during Civil War. If he married Peggy, how does she exist? And is their kiss still canon? Pepper Potts. There have been a lot of non-noteworthy romances in the MCU, but the one between Tony and Pepper Potts has always felt authentic. Many even wondered if Miss Potts herself would be the one to rescue Tony Stark when we saw him hopelessly adrift in space during the Endgame trailer. And in our defense, Marvel Studios did a great job teasing us about this. Gwyneth Paltrow shared a photo of herself wearing a suit of armor, and there's a precedent in the comic books for Pepper becoming a hero. Yes, Pepper Potts gets her very own suit of armor and fights crime under the name Rescue. It's not the most clever name, but that's okay, because the suit's pretty awesome. While she didn't end up rescuing Tony from outer space, she does show up and help save the day wearing her new rescue armor. But now the question remains, what'll Pepper's role in the MCU be? We had heard her chastise Tony for risking his life before, but she seemed totally supportive of this during Endgame. Will she have a mentor-type role with the next generation of superheroes, or will she be a more hands-on hero? Gamora. As we mentioned earlier, Gamora was one of those heroes whose fate we were uncertain about going into Endgame. We saw her perish at the hands of Thanos, and we're sure the fact that he loved her didn't do much to comfort her on her way off that cliff. But thanks to some wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey nonsense, she returned during Endgame, and even took part in the final battle against Thanos. When Tony Stark used the Infinity Gauntlet, we saw Thanos and all of his lackeys disappear, yet we didn't see what happened to Gamora. You might think not turning into dust is a good sign, and normally we'd be inclined to agree with you. But then we have the finale of the movie. We see the Guardians of the Galaxy plus Thor and Nebula, but strangely enough, minus Gamora. We know she no longer remembers her time with the Guardians because she's from a time before they met, but why isn't she at least traveling with Nebula? Did Gamora disappear along with Thanos and his minions, or did she just decide to quit being a Guardian? Or maybe this new Gamora just wants to find love and doesn't want to be forced to choose between Star-Lord and a tree. Hey, at least Groot is the kind of guy you could put down roots with. But maybe Gamora wanted to branch out and... Okay, sorry. Vision. Another hero whose fate at the end of Infinity War was precarious was Vision. Because the Mind Stone was a core component of his being, it was established that Tony Stark and Bruce Banner couldn't remove it without destroying him. However, the recently introduced genius Shuri was confident she could do so if she only had enough time. It was down to the wire during Infinity War, but it looked as though Shuri had been interrupted by the whole decimation thing before she could finish copying Vision's mind. It was left pretty ambiguous how much Shuri accomplished, and we wondered if there was any sort of backup copy of Vision floating around out there. And that question went largely unanswered during Endgame. We only saw Shuri for a few brief moments, and while Scarlet Witch seemed to believe he's gone, we didn't see her conferring with Shuri. Could Vision still exist in some form on Shuri's computer? Maybe he's not totally the Vision we know, but it's entirely possible that he's not gone for good. Or at least that's what we're going to keep telling ourselves. Give us a break. The movie was a real heartbreaker. Infinity Stones. When Bruce Banner sat down for a chat with the Ancient One, she expressed reluctance to hand over the Time Stone for reasons that we're sure we don't have to explain. We all learned that possessing Infinity Stones and tampering with the space-time continuum are pretty frowned upon in the MCU. But Bruce Banner managed to convince her to hand it over by promising he'd bring it back as soon as he was done with it. Although the Ancient One hands it over, she doesn't include the Eye of Agamotto, which holds it safely. She just takes it out for him to grab with his bare hands, which seems like a bad idea, and is contrary to everything we've seen established in the MCU so far. Maybe that necklace had sentimental value or something. We know Steve Rogers went back in time to make good on Bruce's promise to put the stones back where they belong, but where are they in present day? Are they just scattered all over the universe? Are they still just a cloud of atomic particles after being wished away by Thanos? Are our heroes going to have to put some system in place to keep them safe? In the comic books, what happens to the Infinity Stones is a big deal, involving the character Adam Warlock, and an organization known as the Infinity Watch. Will we see this happen in the MCU, or will the stones just float around until they fall into the wrong hands again? Sokovia Accords. We all know that Captain America Civil War changed the superhero game by literally changing the rules our heroes are supposed to follow. The Sokovia Accords made Captain America a criminal, yet in Endgame we saw him openly leading a support group for those who lost loved ones in the decimation. So what now? Sure, the decimation has been reversed, but we now have more highly powered heroes than ever before. They have a woman known for punching apart spaceships and time travel on their side. So what are the new rules? Are superheroes still expected to be registered and controlled by the government? Or is that rule going to be done away with in light of the whole saving the entire universe thing? We know this might sound like a mundane detail, what with the aforementioned spaceship punching and everything, but it's a real concern. How will the events of Endgame influence the public perception of superheroes and the legality of their existence? Does restoring half of all life in the universe mean our heroes get a mulligan for the events of Age of Ultron and Civil War? Missing. Following the decimation, it's understandable that everyone wanted to check in on their loved ones. Scott Lang was anxious to know if his daughter Cassie survived, yet seemed remarkably unconcerned about his ex-wife and her new husband. Not that we were closely monitoring the Endgame IMDb page or anything, but it was big news when new actors began popping up on the cast list. One of these names was 13 Reasons Why star Kathryn Langford, and immediately we started wondering who she would be. Could she be an older Cassie Lang, or the new Hawkeye? But perhaps the most surprising thing was that she didn't appear to be anyone at all. Unless she was dressed as one of Thanos' minions, she didn't appear to be in the movie at all, and her name wasn't listed in the credits. Was her name thrown out there just to get us off track? Was Marvel Studios just trying to mess with us, or did she film some scenes which ended up on the cutting room floor, and not in the final version of the movie? We can admit we still have some questions remaining after watching Avengers Endgame, so what questions are still lingering in your mind? See if your fellow fans can help you figure them out in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.